Hello, my name's Derek Kozel. I'm president of the GNU Radio project, and I'll be giving an update on what's happened in the last year and some thoughts on what's coming up ahead. Of course, it would be great for me to be able to give this in person. However, there was some paperwork that was delayed due to changes in the UK government, and it simply isn't logistically possible for me to be there. Believe me, I wish it were. So taking a look at what we have ahead. I wanted to start with an overview of what is the GNU Radio project, because we have a lot of attendees coming who are new names, as far as I can tell. You may be very experienced in the GNU Radio project, but we also hear that there are some people who may use the code, but not be familiar with the overall scope. So to quickly go through it, obviously there is the code base, the core of GNU Radio, its main blocks, runtime, scheduler, GNU Radio Companion as the user interface, all are what I refer to as the core. The sub-projects, Volk, allowing us SIMD accelerated DSP processing, and SIGMF, our new extension, well, not so new now, a couple years old, and maturing nicely, to be able to store signals with associated metadata in a way that's very compatible both with GNU Radio and with a large number of tools and toolkits coming in the wider ecosystem. We have dozens of supporting projects and pieces of infrastructure. That's our website, all of the infrastructure that this conference has been running on. Lots of bits and pieces that sit in the background, not so obvious, but which build up to enable the development and use of the core, GNU Radio, Volk, SIGMF, all of these very obvious front of house features. Then we have all of the active contributors. The code base doesn't just happen, neither do all of these pieces of infrastructure supporting it. The community that's been built around GNU Radio over its 20-year history is really quite impressive, and it's something that we'll come back to again and again through this talk. Obviously, take a look left and right, and you can see some of those people in the room with you, or you may be one of them yourself. Then we have the broader ecosystem of out-of-tree modules. We have applications such as GQRX and others which use GNU Radio underneath its core. Take a look out for the Fisher talk later on during this week. All of the interfaces that allow data to flow in and out of GNU Radio to interface with other tools, other frameworks, and your own applications. All of those aren't developed by the GNU Radio project directly, as far as, it doesn't live in the GNU Radio GitHub space. However, to say that those aren't part of the broader project would be demeaning to those as projects, devaluing, and really not recognizing a tremendous resource that is part of the reason why people use GNU Radio. There are other frameworks, there are other tools, and yet this is something that has a tremendously broad install base, a huge amount of code and time and effort that has gone into making it actually usable and useful rather than simply shiny. This conference, GNU Radio Conference, is now in its, I believe, 11th year, if I've got that correct, and has been evolving and changing to meet the needs of the community and of the project over time. You'll see this year is slightly different to last year, and we're definitely already thinking of things for next year. We have the European GNU Radio Days and other events that occur around the world and offer opportunities for people to get together and talk about signal processing, talk about wireless communications, talk about the different tools and techniques that go into GNU Radio and other software-defined radio applications. And then, of course, there's you. You may have already seen yourself in one of the lists up above, but you're sitting here in this room as part of this conference, or you're attending online, as clearly am I, and the GNU Radio project without the people would simply vanish into the ether in not that long of a time. It's something that has become increasingly clear over the years is that simply a code base is not a particularly useful thing. It has to be the whole package. And that's something that GNU Radio has done tremendously well at. Something that I always love to do, and I always loved it when Ben Hilburn was president and giving these talks, is to take a brief look at some of the things that have been done over the last year. And obviously, these are the ones that are publicly posted up on Facebook. This is the tip of the iceberg, and many of you will have your own applications that aren't making it onto these slides for various reasons, but which are no less valuable. We have a book published in Spain and covering an introduction to SDR using GNU Radio. Whoever the author is here, Miguel, I really hope that they're enjoying GNU Radio. Clearly they did enough to publish a book. Victor Kai was a speaker at GNU Radio conference last year, I believe, or a couple of years ago, and has gone on as a high school student and has gone on to use their GNU Radio experience to continue on to a large competition. We have posts about using GNU Radio in the cloud, tying it up with Azure. There are some Microsoft folks in attendance. Be sure to catch them if you want to chat about that. But just posting these online demos, it's fantastic, and it gets a tremendous amount of interest in the project. Fisher, as I said, will be having a talk later on this week, a reverse engineering and signals analysis toolkit. Obviously, there are other tools that do this. However, it's great to see one that's built using GNU Radio and can make use of the entire hardware infrastructure, hardware ecosystem of device support that we have, and also making use of a lot of the protocol extensions and protocol development that has been done that allows this tool to be extended and built upon these different pieces. As I said, events, Electromagnetic Field was an event held here in the United Kingdom. It's largely a social event, a camping trip. And yet here we have GNU Radio being introduced to a broader audience of hobbyists and enthusiasts, and likely professionals, but not with that particular hat on during the day. And then a master's thesis. I could have filled this entire slide with academic papers and theses, PhD theses, published actually on GNU Radio, where GNU Radio is not simply a tool being used in it, but the actual topic under study, or the core enabling technology, where you can read every paragraph, and every paragraph is dealing with some interface to GNU Radio, or interoperating with GNU Radio. And so congratulations to Andra Maria Iles from ETH Zurich on completing their master's. Here's somebody to try and snap up if you're looking to hire people. Although I've taken a look and sadly already employed as per LinkedIn, but this is building up the community and the next generation of wireless developers, and this thesis is actually a really interesting one, and I hope that we can get Andra Maria in to give a talk to the architecture group, which I'll be talking about in a moment. I'm looking at the clock and knowing that I need to proceed on with this. So FOSDEM runs every year. It's in Brussels the first weekend of February. We've already seen the call for participation published for next year's event. Be sure to add that to your calendars. And here's just a quick overview of some of the talks that were there last year. We were still running virtually, and so it was a smaller event. But you look at this, and we have FPGA acceleration from within GNU Radio, interfacing with Raspberry Pi GPIOs with a variety of out-of-tree modules, adding OFDM radar to GNU Radio, and just a whole bunch of other pieces here. This isn't a GNU Radio exclusive event in any ways for FOSDEM, but GNU Radio definitely shows its integration into the broader community and its utility as an accessible tool, given how often it crops up in this conference track. I did also want to mention the Software Defined Radio Academy and EU GNU Radio Days, two other recurring events. Their websites weren't so easy to screen grab, but they ran again with an in-person event, and there's some great workshops attached to that event. So again, that's a European centric event, but well worth catching all the recorded talks on YouTube if you're not able to attend in person. So that's taking a look broadly at the community. And the community, I think, really is GNU Radio's strength. So why is there a president? why am I here? Largely, I think that the government structure that we have, that I'll describe briefly here, is one that has emerged out of necessity and out of utility in terms of having a core group of people who can speak authoritatively about the direction of the project and to be that interface between what is a large, amorphous, and highly varying open source community of diverse people and projects and interests, to be that point of contact with single organizations, single people, and to be able to tie those as a bridge. So our governance structure is that we're an unincorporated association. You can check out on our GitHub repository of all things, our governance repository, which has our articles of association, which covers voting and other logistics. It's how we can act as stewards of the project, and something that's emerged. We talked about governance in past years, but this is really an appropriate level piece for the project. We have a whole range of volunteers. Everyone involved in the governance is a volunteer. We haven't been paying out to anybody. We need to represent that whole broad user base as well as possible, and to be responsible so that we have documented rules and pathways to joining the leadership team, how to hold the leadership accountable should anyone in the room or on the stream or anywhere in the project find issue or fault with the leadership. There are pathways for providing that feedback and actually removing members as needed. Hopefully that never happens. It hasn't been necessary, but we'll see. It's better to have it than not. We also publish annual reports about the activities of the board of directors and of the General Assembly as a whole. It's also flexible, and I'll talk more about how we make that happen in the next couple slides and how you can get involved. But it's really all about just enabling and empowering people who are already involved in the project or were already contributing to be able to act in a fashion greater than they would as individuals. So looking at the General Assembly, this is our core steering group, and I certainly hope that I have everyone. So we have Andre Rode, Bastian Blössel, Ben Hilburn, the past president, myself as current president for one more year and then re-election, Jacob Gilbert, Jeff Long, Johannes Demmel, Mark Lichtman, Marcus Muller, Martin Braun, apologies Martin, Nate Temple, Philip Ballister, and Samantha Plaslow. Several of these people are in the room with you right now. Be sure to seek them out, or please wave. And they are our point of contacts. If you want to talk to somebody about the project, find somebody on this list or the email address that you'll see on the next slide, and get in touch. We can act as the clearinghouse to link you with other people in the community as best fits, or to help move forward whatever you would like. In the end, you as a user and as a contributor are the project, and it is the job of the General Assembly to serve and enable anything that is possible and reasonable and feasible to happen as smoothly as possible. So what we have is a structure of teams, and this has been informally true for quite some time. People gathered into chat rooms and coordinated their actions under these different topical areas. A lot of that was ad hoc at previous GNU Radio conferences. We've had birds of a feather and breakout sessions. We do have breakout sessions later today. What we've done is just encapsulated that under a couple of names and been able to attach leads to them. So head to the GNURadio.org website and you can see who the current leads are. And we'd like to build up the membership lists of those teams now that they're a real entity. So we have the architecture team leading the development and planning of the future technical direction of GNU Radio. We have GRCon, the planning committee that has made this event happen. Particular thanks right now, please, for Samantha, Josh, Mark, who have been so heavily involved in making this event happen. We've had Barry, who is in attendance, as well as Steve Croft, who will show up on a slide a little bit later, stepping in on many of the weekly planning meetings, and without a much broader group of people as well filling in individual roles, it simply wouldn't be possible to put on this event. So, from me. The infrastructure team, Andre pretty much solely holds up the IT infrastructure for GNU Radio. And that's everything from the Pretix website that you registered your tickets on, to Indico, the open source event platform that we're running this event on, and we did the call for participation, the schedule, etc. That extends out to our main website, the virtual machines hosting that. Really, the infrastructure team keeps the lights on. GNU Radio Companion, Hakon is in the room and has been leading the development of GNU Radio Companion purely out of a personal project for some time, and it's great to be able to recognize the amount of skill and time that he's been putting in there. And we've got some great news later that should enable that to move forward at a much faster and ambitious pace. Signal metadata format, Volk, the SIMD acceleration library that I mentioned earlier. Many thanks to Johannes and Michael for owning that and moving it forwards. Documentation, and finally the board, which is currently myself, Mark, and Martin, as mentioned in the last slide. Please, if you have an interest in any of these areas, questions, comments, interested in getting involved, send an email. These are open and public, as seen here, and the project cannot represent your interests, your needs, your concerns, unless they are voiced. And hopefully this is going to provide an easier path for general members of the community to most quickly find the right person to speak with. When in doubt, feel free to email me. My email will be on the last slide, the board, and we will clearinghouse you to the right team or jump into chat. But here's some points of contact for you. In terms of getting involved, there is the chat. Apologies, dry mouth. There is the chat, chat.gnuradio.org. Hopefully, if you're here at the conference or attending online, you've already joined. But I got the statistics yesterday for our first day, and no, you haven't. So please do. You can either join directly through our website, or you can join with any Matrix account. The main room for this is #GRCon22 on the GNU Radio home server. Join the mailing list. Discuss-GNU Radio. There's a link from our wiki, wiki.gnuradio.org, to find that. Great for longer form questions and more in-depth things that need more files and stuff attached to it. But the chat's great for quick responsiveness and general hangout. File issues. Go onto our GitHub. Report issues. They can't be fixed unless somebody knows about them. Now, we'll talk later about why there's no guarantees that things will be fixed and that there's no set time to respond, but this is really something that is quite important. If you wish to further the project, please do review issues, add details, go onto an issue and try and recreate the issue in the latest code base. We have a lot of open ones that probably aren't accurate. They've probably been addressed. So that's a hugely valuable contribution. That's also a great way of learning GNU Radio as a tool. Improve the tutorials. The tutorials live on the wiki. We'll definitely see them in a couple slides as well. But they're open for editing. Give a talk about GNU Radio to your coworkers, your friends, local hackspace, and get the word out there. The more the community grows, and there is, out of inevitability, turnover in the community, people leaving and people joining, the more we can bring people in, the more the project is capable of doing as a whole. Here's a list of the top couple good first issues on GitHub. So if you're sitting at the conference and you're not quite sure what to do with that spare 10% of attention that isn't going to the talk, or you just need a bit of a break, check out one of these. Even if you're a really experienced developer, or perhaps especially if you are, this is a great way of really quickly knocking out something that's going to make life better for everyone here. If you're brand new, dive in anyways. And when you hit a problem, because that's just what coding is, then jump into the chat or find somebody around. Probably the CTF room is a reasonable place to find some people who are hands-on and going to be diving in. Ask questions and you'll get help. The block documentation, head onto the wiki. You can find any of the blocks that are in the GNU Radio core. Just open up one of these pages and you'll see some of them have lots of examples and details, flow graphs, photos, and that's something that you can extend for the ones that are missing that. Or try out the block and go, actually, it doesn't quite work that way, or it does, but that wasn't clear, that was not obvious, and document it. We're going to have some work that will be bringing this documentation on the wiki much more in close contact with the tool. So improvements made here are going to have a big impact later on. So again, this is listing out those resources. Please do jump in. Now, what else is the project? We are also partnered with the SETI Institute. This is something that came about in 2019, and we partnered up with them because as GNU Radio grows, our administrative and logistical needs have grown, and the partner that we were with at the time, the Free Software Foundation, was great. They were doing, we had the great philosophical alignment with them as we are a GNU project. However, they aren't experts in software-defined radio technology. If anything, that's our job within the GNU project. And so the SETI Institute was a really natural partner as they are massive large-scale users of software-defined radio. They handle bandwidths that you don't find in many other applications. And they're completely open and transparent and interested in public outreach, education, and research, all of which are aspects of the GNU Radio project and of our community. And so there was a fantastic mission alignment there. Also, we had to deal with finances and logistics. An unincorporated association signing on to a contract with the Hilton, not something that's going to happen quite so easily, and no doubt we would miss things if it were simply us as a couple of engineers trying to make this work. And so I have a bunch of shout-outs that are inevitably going to be insufficient to people within the SETI Institute who have been involved in supporting the project with their experience and skills in areas that we didn't have ourselves within our volunteer base. So Rebecca McDonald, who I'll have a photo of in a moment, is Director of Communications, and you'll see her at the GNU Radio conference. CEO Bill Diamond has been meeting with me and talking about the long-term vision of where GNU Radio and SETI can work on collaborative projects, and also just offering really some advice on how administratively can an organization grow from a small piece. Now we've set up a leadership structure. What are the next steps? How do we develop beyond that? And so then Steve Bordeaux and Amanda Shenik are part of the SETI Institute development team, and we will almost certainly be leaning on them more heavily in years to come as we try and find new ways of reaching out to more of the GNU Radio community. Ben Hilburn, in some of his previous project talks, has described how really what we see publicly is only 5–10%. Nobody knows the number, but it's very evidently not a large percentage of the GNU Radio users and use cases. And so we need to find new ways of reaching out to a much broader base of users who aren't going to be engaging in the same ways as the existing people who are publicly represented and publicly involved. Debbie Collier is leading up the SETI Institute grants team, and there will definitely be some slides on that in a minute. Shelley Smith, June McGee, handling finances and accounting. We do end up with a lot of traffic, mostly around GNU Radio Conference. There are hundreds and hundreds of you, and that's just a lot of moving pieces and pieces of, well, not paperwork anymore, but line items that we need to get right. We have our taxes to pay, all of that. And they've been a tremendous help with that. Yvonne Nicholas signing contracts. In the end, she's the one who has the experience to make sure that we're getting the right arrangements out of people and organizations that we partner with. And finally, Lee and Jasmine, who have been doing graphics and swag and other artistic support and design support. So if you've bought one of the shirts, you've benefited from some of their work. I am running definitely short on time, so I'm going to really try and hit a pace here. We ran a Hackfest in 2019 with the SETI Institute at the Allen Telescope Array, a 42-dish interferometer in Northern California. It was fantastic. COVID hit. We will be looking to return probably to the ATA, but certainly to a Hackfest partnering with the SETI Institute in the spring or summer of next year. So look forward to announcements on that. Sorry, we don't have a date quite yet. On site with you, Dr. Steve Croft. Check out his talk at 11:30. Rebecca McDonald, Director of Communications. You may have seen her at the registration desk or at the SETI Institute booth. She's got a great perspective on what the entire institute is up to. And Dr. Wael Farah, who is involved in instrument design, DSP authoring, and machine learning at the Allen Telescope Array, and have background at other instruments as well. So be sure to find them, thank them for their support of the GNU Radio project, and get to know them. They've got some great backgrounds that many of us could benefit from, and the project certainly. On to another section that I've inherited from Ben Hilburn and quite like. The lies, damn lies, and statistics section. So here we see a basic plot of contributions over time. This is largely meaningless, except to say that GNU Radio continues to be developed at a great pace. And while I probably should have put a marker on here, I think you can see when Josh Moorman took over as lead maintainer of the main development branch, which is largely what this plot is representing, as we can see a great uptick from 2020 onwards. And so look forward to bright futures. Now, this is a great one. When did you order your ticket? Part of the nightmare of running the GNU Radio conference is not knowing how many people are going to be attending. And actually, if we look at our gray line here, this is a plot of the percentage of orders over time leading up to the day of the event. Over half of you had not registered as of well, less than 20 days ago, so less than 3 weeks ago. Yes, this is fairly representative. Yes, this is the worst year in recent history. And no, we didn't have late registration tickets. I'm not saying that we'll reintroduce them next year, but please don't be surprised if we do, because this is stressful. Yes, we reach a great endpoint, but cash flow is a thing, and food and beverage guarantees and numbers and ordering, all of that logistics is a lot easier if we have some information ahead of time. Now, this plot is normalized, so it's a great statistical demonstration, and it gives us some good information, but I know that there's going to be people out there who actually want to know the base numbers. So if we take a look at this plot, we can see the number of attendees for the last couple years. There's some fudge factors and roundings and errors in here of a couple percent, depending on how you count orders, etc. And significantly, this is only in-person tickets. A plot that I don't have, but will definitely make available later on in chat, is the virtual orders for this year compared to the last couple years. We can see that we had a great progression going from 2018 to 2019, and we don't have the base number, this degree of detail for 2017, 16, etc. But we've basically been marching very nicely up in attendee numbers, which is great to get more people in the room and more discussions happening. COVID hit. Ouch. Pain. 2020 online, really not representative, so not included in this plot. We had 1,600 online attendees, which is great, but would completely blow out the axis. Looking at last year, I think one of the big takeaways for this is I'm tremendously glad that we ran the event, and that was the sentiment that I heard from people in the room and people online. It was tremendously valuable to run the event and to return to not lose the traction that we had. Obviously, the attendee numbers were much lower, but it was great to have the people that we did have. And as we can see from 2022, it's surging back up to the previous numbers. So 2023, looking forward to a fantastic event. Hopefully with some earlier registrations, please. One of the other notes here is we can definitely see there's been a large variety in when we've opened up ticket sales. We will be opening up ticket sales a bit earlier than this year, aiming for kind of that February time frame. We'll see when that goes, but there's really nothing holding us up from almost opening it today. More stats. On GNU Radio, we have the number of people who have been cloning over, this is a 2-week time span. And so we can see that there were 950 unique clones just from GitHub. Now we also have our cgit at GNUradio.org or .GNUradio.org instance where you can download all of our code is mirrored there. It lives on our own infrastructure there as well. So that's not 100% of the people cloning via Git, but it's probably pretty close. Having looked at the 2019, 2020 numbers, this is significantly higher. It's a 50% increase, I think it was. And so we have a lot more people polling there. But also, if we take a look at the other plot here, the CondoForge bit, which thanks so much Ryan Volz for packaging GNU Radio, there's almost 400,000 downloads there. I would love to understand this number a lot better, but I think the big takeaway for me is that our packaging has improved and more people are installing it through apt, thanks Maitland, and through other packaging methods and access. And so while we're getting more people cloning Git, I view that as probably the developers or people following somewhat older or flexible instructions. The packaging, I think, really represents a bit of a better view into kind of the behind the scenes dark user base where we have a really significant presence. Also, we have a tremendous number of people visiting, 3,500 unique visitors to just the main core code in the last 2 weeks. That's a number which really helps me get up in the morning and stay involved. It's great to see so many people interested. Now, we also get to see where those visitors are coming from. And in the past 2 weeks, a large percentage of our visits to the website have come from Falcon Blog, a Japanese individual's website where they publish an FM stereo receiver with some parameters that I can't understand. But it's fantastic to see, again, the impact that GNU Radio has around the world. So jumping, as I'm conscious of time as well, into funding. GNU Radio has long had a cycle where we would basically year to year have zero income growth. Our expenses met our income, and that is no longer the case, which is great. And that's a trend that's been happening for the past couple years. COVID was very nerve-wracking. We didn't have the same type of income then that we did from the conference, obviously, in 2020 or 2021. But we are now at a point where the project actually has some cash in the bank. And by the bank, I mean SETI Institute's accounts. And so this conference isn't done yet, but we do expect it to produce some revenue, some profit. And so we're looking at ways of reinvesting that. And I've got a couple notes on the next slides. And we're looking for feedback as well. Where would you like to see GNU Radio spend money? So the conference is a huge expense and our vastly biggest source of income up until now. We've also started pulling in some grants. We have methods of donating. This doesn't quite add up to the project having a clear business plan, as it were. We're not a business, we're a nonprofit, and organizationally just not prioritized and structured commercially. But but there is a need to be sustainable, to be able to support the efforts that the community's needs require. So looking at grants, we've got NumFocus, ARDC, and the NSF. NumFocus is a nonprofit in the United States. We joined it as an affiliated project in 2021, and in the fall of 2021, we applied for and were approved for a small development grant. This is a system that they run several times a year to do a revamp of the tutorials. Many thanks to Mark Lichtman for leading the writing of that application. He's been our major interface to NumFocus, and he also executed the performance of that grant once issued by hiring Matt Carrick of Wavewalker DSP to run through our tutorials, edit the ones that existed, and end up rewriting a bunch of the ones that were there to be a substantially more useful set of tutorials, going in more detail with better flow, better pedagogical content. How do you actually onboard somebody to a tool? And a lot of that ends up being teaching the plumbing of the tool in a way that's accessible and enjoyable, but getting in the pieces of information that they need when they need it. He also wrote several new tutorials and pages. Please do check this out. wiki.gnuradio.org or tutorials.gnuradio.org. They're a great resource, and we've already heard somebody yesterday comment how even after years of experience using GNU Radio, this is a great resource for them to find and use new features. We also have developer resources for porting from earlier versions to the current. So the idea has come up that GNU Radio should do some of its own small development grants. As I said, we expect to have some money in the bank that we can spend and invest in the project. We won't be spending $100,000 on some huge effort based off of what we currently have. That's not the sort of income that we generate. But we can absolutely do a series of $5,000 grants, a $10,000 if that was something that really made sense. And so there's a wiki page called Grant Ideas. Also, please email ideas to any of the teams that you think would be able to spend money effectively. If you have ideas, we want to hear them. If you have needs that you think are well matched with this sort of structure, definitely let us know. I've included the NumFocus steps here. This is not something that we're committed to adopting. It's not something that I've honestly spoken with a lot of people about, but in thinking more about this talk, this was something that came up, and I think that we could embrace some of the process here, because any decisions that the leadership makes, any decisions that the group of stewards makes, needs to be accountable and responsive to the community. So this seems like a nice place to start the conversation. ARDC, also present in the room with us now. Please raise your hand. I believe it's Dan who's attending. ARDC is a nonprofit in the United States as well, whose mission it is to support digital communications, science, technology, and education experimentation. And so we applied for a fairly large grant for them, and I'm really thrilled to say that we received this. So it was awarded in March of 2022. It is $260,000. That is the total number. There's some overhead involved in there. So the working amount is somewhat less than that. But it's to fund a set of core improvements to GNU Radio, which I'll quickly run through on the next slides, and you can find more detail online. We had a 6-month setup period, and we're basically coming out of that. So we're looking to hire on people to execute this grant over the next year and a half. So next year's GNU Radio conference should have at least one talk, if not more, covering the execution of this grant. I'm tremendously excited about this. This is game-changing for GNU Radio in the past decade. Out of this, I'm going to quickly gloss over this. The slides will be available online. We have, or hit pause, of course, if you're on the recording. Installing GNU Radio's been a constant pain point. As much as we get new packaging there's still a lot that isn't covered, and a lot of the packaging could be easier if GNU Radio itself was structured slightly differently. We do a good job, not a great job. And out-of-tree modules are largely unpackaged. As much as Ryan and Maitland have been working, there's still dozens and dozens of out-of-tree modules that are not simple to install, and particularly on Windows. There have been some community efforts. I looked, and I think a lot of those have now shut down. It's a volunteer-based thing, so it needs improvement. We're going to fund that. If you have experience developing installers on Windows, please reach out. The email address is on a slide or two from now, jobs@gnuradio.org. Same for Mac OS. We want a binary installer for both of these. We want binary installers for out-of-tree modules. We want continuous integration and testing, etc. And we want that for out-of-tree modules as well. Documentation. Taking the usage manual that we have, the block docs, the tutorials, and making offline and portable versions of those. Going through example flow graphs and validating that they work, improving them, documenting them. In another round of improving tutorials. There's definitely still ground to do there. Obviously, we had a great experience with Matt Carrick. We are going to be looking to hire on more people as contractors to perform these pieces of work. Software maintenance, going through all of our issues and just cleaning them up. You know, the triage system is really essential here. We need to cover this. Continuous integration testing, that's really largely been done since by the community since we started writing this grant, but there's absolutely room to improve and add more tests, and so that's definitely an item that's still necessary. And our integration testing can definitely be extended onto these other platforms. We are now building on them, but there's a difference between building and actually exercising the tool, and so we want to improve that. GNU Radio Companion. It's been a great tool for many years. It will remain a great tool, but it doesn't have a preferences window. There's a lot of the documentation that isn't easily accessible. You can't manage and view the out-of-tree modules that are installed, what version, paths, stuff like that. The examples are largely unknown to many users, so adding an example menu. None of these are groundbreaking changes, but added up all together, I really think it's going to change the new user experience and just all of our quality of life. I don't want the pain and effort that there is right now to do a lot of these things to continue. We all deserve better, and because of ARDC, we're all going to get better. So look forward to that coming up, and if you can think of people who would be able to perform this work, please get in touch. There was a tail end of the grant, which covers project management. This is going to be a new thing for the project. We are actually going to be funding a member of the leadership team to be coordinating this grant as a paid activity. The salary is not competitive with, a top-tier job, but it's a heck of a thing for what has been a volunteer role up until now. We're also getting professional services from the SETI Institute. So we're hiring. Email us, jobs@gnuradio.org. Finally, I want to talk briefly, as I know I'm at the end of my time, about shifting gears. For folks who have driven manual cars, stick shift, you know that feeling of when you are pushing your engine as hard as you can go and everything's heating up and you just know that you're going to wear things out if you continue at the pace. GNU Radio has had waves of development, in its life cycle of where the effort is going and where the greatest need is. For a long time, it was simply building the tool. Then the tool became intensely usable and a great resource. And I started coming on the scene around when 3.7 was the main version. And we got a great number of years where people were building applications and out-of-tree modules, and a lot of the energy was going into the broader ecosystem. Now we see that there's a great need to improve the core, and check out Josh Moorman's talk tomorrow on technically where we're going in 4.0. We need to deliver that work. We need heterogeneous compute. We need distributed compute. We need the ability to in a more nuanced fashion, express how the work should be performed and where. All of these things are on the roadmap and are being developed. But in order to make the most use of that, the organization is being put under, the volunteer group is being put under a lot of pressure to make this function. So we need to shift gears. We need to move to the next level and change what the GNU Radio project looks like in some ways. And I wanted to end the talk really on this, flashing it up. This is a grant run by the National Science Foundation, the Pathways to Enable Open Source Ecosystems. This honestly is a huge stretch for us. The demands by the NSF on what constitutes a grant application is much higher than NumFocus or ARDC were expecting. The SETI Institute has a great background in applying for NSF grants and receiving them. The coordination and management and reporting, all of those are a higher standard. But this grant is custom built for GNU Radio. It's all about taking an existing framework, which we absolutely have, an existing ecosystem, which we have, but we know that there's a lot of pain points in. We know that the out-of-tree modules go out of date. Authors leave. We have no handover structure for that. We know that the project as a whole receives a lot of offers of collaborations that we're unable to be responsive to because we're a purely volunteer group and we just don't have the number of people, the number of hours, and the office support, the administrative capacity to interface with a fast-moving company or organization that's trying to develop some cutting-edge feature. And that's exactly what Posse is designed to facilitate the jump, facilitate this shifting of gears. So we're planning on applying to this. The timeline's pretty short, and we'll see if we make it. I really hope so. And that's going to be a big thing for this next month, is making sure that we do. How can you support? Get involved. Advertise that you use GNU Radio. Please let us know that you use GNU Radio and let us recognize that. We're going to be creating both slides and support documentation and some recognition on our website of companies, organizations, and individuals using GNU Radio. So get in contact if you're willing for us to use your logo and name and say that you're a user of GNU Radio. Write a letter of support. A lot of these large funding organizations need to see that the project has impact and some details about it. We can keep these letters of support confidential because particularly one of the things that's expected, particularly in Europe and the United Kingdom, but also in the United States as well, is the actual economic impact. And we don't need, the whole financial records, but what do you think GNU Radio is worth to your organization? We're not expecting money from you, but we could really use some of your information and support so that we can go to these other organizations and get that money from them, get these grants. Publish a white paper. Again, that's visibility and evidence for us to support what we're doing. Join a team. Contribute your experience. All of these make a huge impact to the project. So if any of those sound like things that you can do, get in contact with one of the teams if you want to join them. Join the chat, etc. We all hang out there. We're there quite regularly and very accessible. You can also contact me directly, dkozel@gnuradio.org. I'm on Matrix, our main chat system, and I'm on Twitter. If you're more of an open and casual person or would like, as an organization, to start highlighting things, we'd love to promote the projects that you're doing and your use of GNU Radio through our channels as well. So thanks very much, and have a great rest of the conference. I hope that I can be there in person next year and see many of you in person.